Welcome guys to the Revive Stronger podcast. This is the improvement season with myself, Steve Hall, and Pascal Floor. Say hi, Pascal.
Hey, we are back.
We are back. So sorry. I think everyone's been bugging me for an episode of the improvement season podcast. Yeah. No, they actually haven't, but I do think you guys enjoy these because it's just a bit of a different thing towards the kind of interview podcasts, and I think we give out some information that's maybe more sometimes practically applied, and sometimes the interviews we have where people give out, and I've talked about this recently, that those general recommendations, we kind of take those and apply them to ourselves, our clients, and make them a bit more individualized and give you what that might look like. Anyway, we're going to go over Pascal's last few weeks and then go over mine. And then we're going to dive into kind of dealing with holidays, training, nutrition, mindset, that sort of thing, because that's part of where my 2 weeks have been. So Pascal, you've got a haircut and beard trim.
Yeah, finally. I'm a new person once again. It's funny because when you take a look at all the improvement season podcast episodes and Revive to Stage episodes, the changes I've gone through, it's so funny because you can really see like the beard was there, then the hair was long, then the beard was gone with long hair. So I'm going through all the transformations. I was lean, now I'm fat, right? So all the transformations in such a short period of time. But yes, I did get a haircut. It was about time, I think, and I'm pretty satisfied with it myself. But it could be that I have a wrong perspective on it, and I'm living an illusion or something. But anyway, this isn't what I wanted to talk about. I'm a little bit sluggish, I must say, before I get started, because my neighbors decided to celebrate their birthday yesterday, and they are living right up there. So I try to stay as focused as possible and try to have my cognitive functioning as high as possible for you guys. So
have you had coffee?
I had a coffee, but it is already like 4 hours ago. So I don't expect that the coffee is still there or present. Yes, you made a post about the half-life of caffeine in the system, but I can't feel it anymore. But anyway, the previous weeks in terms of training, nutrition, nothing really big happened for me. I just went through a normal mesocycle. Everything went quite well. I implemented now finally the squats and the deadlifts again after my torn ligament in December. And it was so funny because the first week when I started to squat again, I was just working my way back up to a heavy weight, and I just went by feel, right? And I went in there, loaded the bar with 140 kilograms, and I did squatted for 8 repetitions with reps in reserve. And if you haven't squatted for like 10 weeks and then immediately load the bar with something like 140 kilograms, it was just an insanely funny feeling, because I was squatting. First set went just fine, and then I dug under the bar for the second set, squatted down, and I could already feel that the DOMs are coming. It was so insane, and I was always bragging about in the past that I don't feel squats in my legs, right? But it was just because of the repeated bout effect, because I was constantly doing squats, and my body was just used to that. And now that I had a long layoff, it was just like I could literally feel that my legs were about to explode. It felt like the muscles are just like, wanting to get out of my skin. It was kind of a masochistic and joyful sensation at the same time. I really did like that while I was squatting, but I only managed to do 2.5 sets, or not managed, but it was almost scheduled. And holy shit, let me tell you, the DOMs were so severe. I couldn't even do my second lower body session at the end of the week on the planned day, even though I had like 3 days in between. So I needed to delay it by an additional rest day. And it was just funny. But other than that, everything is just going absolutely fine. Nothing severe happened. I'm still dealing with that little niggling thing on my traps in my rhomboids area. And it's about time to actually have a consultation again with Quinn on that one, because we now tracked it for, I think, it's upcoming 9 weeks already of track data on the volume, and also the feeling on when I wake up in the morning, then pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout, and then in the evening. Everything I need to scale or rate the sensation in my back to then give it to him. We take a look then over the workload, what I did on that specific day, and reassess everything. And other than that, nothing really to report. That is true bodybuilding or strength training.
Keeping shit
nothing
basically
fancy.
The same.
Yeah, nothing fancy. Just getting in, getting the work done, and do what is required from you. And at times it might look boring for other people, but this is what you have to do then, I think.
100%. I think I've said it before, like bodybuilding training is incredibly boring. Like it's probably not as boring as powerlifting, because at least we do actually have to like exercise selection. We have a much bigger menu list compared to a powerlifter who are like selecting off. They're going to a restaurant and they've got 5 choices. We're going to a restaurant and they do everything.
So are we like a franchise chain? So bodybuilding is a franchise chain, and powerlifting is like the Michelin star restaurant where you only have to pick from 2 or 3 meals or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If we were using a direct comparison, it is always those restaurants that provide everything. You're just like, this is going to be shit, isn't it?
Yeah,
the food's not going to be good.
No, but other than that, I have really nothing to report. Nothing fancy happened, and once again, it is like what it is. Not big changes in my training routine, not big changes in the nutritional approach. This is just what you then have to do. Stay on track, trust the process, and at some point it gets boring for the outside.
And I thought actually it was really interesting what you said about the squats and how like the accommodating resistance or like the adaptive resistance, that sort of thing, and how when you come back to them, like they just completely destroy you from nothing. It's remind me of you'll know the client Damien. He's been a bit kind of on and off with his training recently, and he just kept on having to kind of restart this the first microcycle of his mesocycle. He definitely won't be listening to this, so it's okay. I can call him out. And I just decided, like, right, I'm taking out any fly movements for your chest. I'm removing a set from your squats, like everything. And he looked at the program. He was like, "Oh my God, Steve, this looks like ridiculously easy." And I was like, "You do it and see." And he was like, "Mate, I've had DOMs in my legs like for the last 4 days."
Totally. And it's funny that you mentioned that now, because right now one of my clients is actually going through a prana phase, had his overreaching week last week. So Zema, man, shout out to you. And it on paper looked like he's doing such a high volume, right? Because he had prescribed in his overreaching week 7 sets of something like deadlifts and an upper body movement. But that's it. Nothing more, right? And then only in a repetition range of like 4 reps or something, which isn't that high as a total tonnage. Sure, the intensity is high, but in general, when you compare it to bodybuilding training, the overall volume that has been done was quite low. But on paper, it looked kind of quite easy when you compare the set numbers, the rep numbers, to what he has done previously in other mesocycles for bodybuilding purposes. But now I know that in week 3, he was already reporting a high level of fatigue. And I was just saying, okay, before we already now implement the deload, let's push for another week. Let's just bump your calories up and really make sure to push through that additional week to make sure that we have deserved that deload, right? But that just shows that only because on paper it looks kind of quote unquote easy doesn't really mean that it has to. And it's the same when it comes to programming set numbers for each exercise. Because I think that many people go overboard. We've talked about it in previous episodes already, that I think that many people prescribe way too much volume. I did it myself as well. I definitely admit that. But now it's more about prescribing less sets, but putting in more quality sets and reps for that giving time you're at the gym. And it works. Right.
The primer phase is actually, or the kind of low volume maintenance phase, is a really good reminder of that, actually, because not only is intensity higher anyway, because generally you lower the repetition range or increase kind of percentage 1 rep max, and then you have fewer sets, so you have to go in there and give those sets your all. And then when you come into your first hypertrophy mesocycle, you're like, I need to have that same intent. And like we've spoken about before, even if you're 3 reps in reserve, if you're doing something like a squat, like 3 reps in reserve is still really hard. Like it's not going to be easy. If it's easy, like you're probably not actually 3 reps in reserve.
It's funny that you mentioned it, because here today I had my first deload session, and I did pull, and I reduced the intensity and also the volume. I was trying to be in the RER or RPE range of 3 to 5 reps in reserve. And it was still heavy. Right, and I think when people complain about that it's not heavy enough, they perhaps underestimate or pick the wrong weights for it, or there's something else off in their approach to picking the weights or something.
No, totally. And I guess that's a good kind of transition into where I've been the last 2 weeks. So yeah. So my first of the 2 weeks was in Mexico, and I became a drug lord.
And it didn't work out.
It didn't work out at all.
Have you watched, sorry to interrupt you there, have you watched Narcos right before that, just to get you in the right mood and stuff?
I've never seen Narcos. I should have watched it.
Holy shit. I see a shitstorm coming now in the comment section below. But yeah, that's not bad, because I am the one who actually deals with all the comments on YouTube.
That's true.
So, and I've watched Narcos, so I can deal with that.
My MRV is so big that I have no time for anything in my life but training. Imagine that.
God.
Oh dear. Anyway, so yeah, I went to. Why have I now forgotten? We flew into Cancun, and then we went to Playa del Carmen. So was there for a week, which was basically just lots of walking, lots of Mexican food, and chilling out and relaxing, and it was good. And I did train 3 times when I was out there, managed to, which is always fun. I find fun anyway. And this is what we're going to talk more in depth about. So I won't talk too much more about that. And then in the last week just gone, actually I should have said, like you, I'm not my 100% Steve, because I have come down with a slight cold, but I'm hoping to just get away with it. Kind of one of those ones that just skirts the surface. And it's like, I just got a little bit of a sore throat. I just feel a bit tired. I'm hoping by tomorrow it'll be gone, because I ain't got time for colds. We're probably all the same. We've not got time to get ill. So yeah, the last week it's just so fun getting back into training. Like, everyone knows the feeling after a deload, like you're just ravenous to get back into the gym and smash some weights. And whilst you have to hold yourself back a little bit, or if it's the first week of your mesocycle, otherwise you're probably gonna, maybe do something and you would have to deload early. It's just so nice to get back in there, get the pump going back on, and all of my lifts, because I'm still in that kind of, I guess, still in that bit of a honeymoon period post comp. My lifts are still progressing really nicely. So everything from last mesocycle to this mesocycle is pretty much up. Even screwed up my sumo deadlifts. So I did like close stance squats, 4 sets, and then I did 3 sets of leg press. So I was not, so I purposely have done this and put sumo deadlifts next. So I'm not expecting good performance in the sumo deadlifts, particularly. I'm more so putting my quads on the front and putting my hamstrings and glutes and things on the back burner. So I put what I thought was 170 on the bar. I was aiming for 180, but I was like, no, this 170 is feeling hard. So I did 2 sets of what I thought was 170. Taking the load off the bar, and I was like, I think it was 195 or something. I was like, how did I even work that out? I'm just not thinking. So I was surprised with the performance even on that. And I think I got like 8 and then 6 reps, which is pretty decent. For me, like I think that's even PR territory on its own after doing all the squats and leg press.
I had it once when I was over in New York City in 2015, I guess it was, when I really needed to convert over to pounds from kilograms when it came to the plates. And I did it on my phone, and I was never prepared when I went into the gym, and I always needed to calculate it on location, and I always picked the wrong weights, and it felt so heavy each and every time.
It's really easy to do. It's easy not to do, but for some reason it's really easy to do as well. I just thought I was massively fatigued after. I was like, I normally sumo deadlift first, so I just must be really tired. So 170 feels heavy, and then I think often I think what I do is I put on 10s either side, and it's 20 kilos extra, and I think I'm putting on just 10 overall for some, I don't know how, it's like, I am not an idiot, but for some reason I am in that situation.
Sometimes I really wish, though, that someone else would pick the weights for you, to have a coach on location or something, and you can't see the weight that has been picked. Because I think that there's a lot of placebo going on. Because I do remember that there are some quote-unquote milestones of weight where once this is on the bar, there's just some kind of switch turning in my head, and it makes the whole thing so much more heavier. And sometimes it would just be super cool if someone would pick the weight, put it on the plate, put it on the bar, and you can't see what's on the plate, what's on the bar. Goddamn.
No, totally. I think it's like when you first go for like 100 kilos on bench press and stuff, like that's scary stuff. But it's really nice. I've noticed in my training, like I'm putting weight on the bar. This is boring bodybuilding training for you and just like going through the motions. But I'm putting weight on the bar, especially things like bench press. And I'm like, holy shit, like I'm almost benching like 100 kilos for like sets of 8. For me, that's like really good. Like
because of shoulder, right?
Yeah, I'm not, I blame my shoulder, but I'm not a strong bencher. I'm not a strong presser at all. And it's
which is funny because your chest is actually really well developed.
Why, thank you. Yeah, it's not a weak point at all. No. But you see this sometimes, like I get shocked. I look at bodybuilders and I'm like, man, you're huge, but you're way weaker than me. That's fucking annoying.
So, hey, don't even get me started. Because I came from a power, just compare the two of us, right? When I was weighing 75 kilograms in my contest prep, I wasn't ready at all to step on stage, right? And 75 kilograms was for you stage weight.
Yeah, it's frustrating as hell.
With the strength levels, we are not that far apart.
No, I guess loads of stuff comes into it, but I actually think, I think you can get, I think for you, actually part of your powerlifting background is potentially holding you back because you've got stronger, and so you can't handle as much volume as someone else who maybe come from bodybuilding and then kind of transitioned.
We see it with my back that it always flares up, and it's not that I'm doing horrendous amounts of back volume, but it's just like, yes, I'm doing rows, 1-arm rows. I don't even have dumbbells that are heavy enough to cause a sufficient amount of stimulus and a good amount of rep ranges. I need to do it at the machine, right? To pick the weights that I can load it up to, 75, 80 kilograms, and then do single arm single arm rows and stuff, right? And I think that this has definitely something to do to what you've been saying here right now.
Mm-hmm. Actually, what was I going to say? It's funny, my new gym, I've moved gyms because we're in the new flat now, and this gym only has dumbbells up to 38 kilos.
Holy shit.
Like, which is like 80 pounds or something. So yeah, it's really not very much. So yeah, I can't do any like Romanian RDLs or anything, dumbbell RDLs. But anyway.
And I thought it is called the gym.
I know. Every time I'm like, I'm going to the gym, and I'm like, I'm actually going to the gym. yeah, I need to get over that, because that's just going to annoy people. They're going to be like, yeah, Steve, we get it. Like, there's a chain called the gym. So anyway, we're getting into our topic probably now. In which we are going to be talking about holidays and how to deal with holidays. So I've been rambling on a load just now, so I'm going to pass over to Pascal. I don't know where we should start. Like, should we start with how you might kind of plan for a holiday? Should we start with that, or I'll just let you talk about how you deal with holidays?
Yeah, so we've actually came up with a really good infographic at some point, how you approach holidays. I think it would be a good idea to put the link or the infographic in the blog post so that you guys can see it and actually make use of it, because it is kind of a guide, three-step approach to how to deal with holiday and how to track on holiday when it comes to nutrition and stuff like that. But I think we need to separate between the training aspect and the nutritional aspect, because when it comes to holidays, sometimes you simply don't have the chance of getting in your training because there's no gym facility around. And if there is, perhaps it's not having the kind of equipment you want or need to get your training session in as you are used to. When it comes to the nutritional aspect, though, sometimes you have the ability to still track meticulously if you want to, or sometimes when we take a look at something like Maldives or Seychelles, there's always just buffets and stuff, and there aren't really any kind of supermarkets, at least from what I've heard. And if you buy something there, then it's overly expensive or anything like that. I know you have been there, right?
I've been to the Maldives when I was a little boy, and it's like just all inclusive.
Yeah, and in that regard, it makes tracking, of course, really difficult, because when you are at such a place, you don't want to put out your scale and measure every single food you're ingesting. And so where should we begin? Should we touch on training or nutrition first, or try to combine it or something?
Let's go with nutrition. I think that's probably where most people are finding difficult.
So in my opinion, when you're not competing, when you're not preparing for a photo shoot or anything like that, I would say just take a break. Simply because 1 week or 2 weeks will not make the big difference. And I would even say, or go as far in saying, that perhaps it might be even beneficial to take a break there, just from a physiological and mental aspect, because it is holiday, right? You are picking a moment together with your loved ones or your family to go out there, enjoy the time, and not stress about your daily life and the daily tasks you are supposed to do. So I think when it comes to holiday, overall, I would always try to recommend, okay, just relax a little bit. If you still want to track, that's fine, but don't really stress about it too much. After a while that you have been tracking macros and calories and stuff, you should have somehow of an understanding of how much you're eating, the food decisions you are making on a daily basis. And this should be fine. Most of the time, as long as you don't eat like an asshole or like a child, you should be fine. And most of the time, I even see people lose weight because they are way more active on their holidays than at home. And if you then eat at around maintenance, perhaps you even lose some weight. But I don't think that you need to stress about gaining weight or fearing of gaining weight, because I see it all the time that people are a little bit afraid of not tracking on holiday because they fear of gaining fluff. But most of the time, I hardly ever saw that happen. I mean, I've been there. I gained weight on holiday when I was in New York City, for example. But in such a Western city where there's so much palatable food, even when you're taking in so many steps as I did and I trained hard, I was still eating like an asshole. And once again, as I already mentioned, as long as you're not eating like an asshole or not eating like a small child, making good and aware decisions when it comes to food choices, There's nothing to stress about. That being said, though, once again, when you're in a contest prep, when you are preparing for a photo shoot, or when you are perhaps that type of person who needs a little bit of accountability, who needs to stay on track, even when you're on a holiday, that's absolutely fine. But then try to be more flexible and give yourself a little bit more flexibility. That doesn't mean that you need to go just off board, but then you can say for yourself, okay, all I'm doing is estimating now. We have a good article on how to estimate macros when you're eating outside. Other than that, you can get away with trying to only track your proteins, and total calories should be fine as well, right? But yeah, I mean, it all boils down to where you're at right now, what your personal preferences are. If it gives you kind of anxiety thinking about not tracking, and or with whom you're traveling, because I'm always traveling by myself. When I'm traveling by myself, I can still be on track. Right? Because I don't have to, make space for that flexibility for social events or social occasions. But I know that if I were to travel with someone else, especially loved ones or family, I would definitely cut down my meticulous tracking, because it would also stress the people around you and not make the holiday as lovely for them as it could be. And I think that's not justified. And you're doing people in your environment a little bit of a disservice, unless, once again, you're in a contest prep. But then again, I mean, you can always plan ahead so that you take a diet break or take a break from dieting in general during that time.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you pretty much covered the whole of the nutritional aspect right there. And I could absolutely just leave it. The only thing I would say is, and I think you'd be exactly the same in this opinion, Pascal, is I see people coming out with kind of statements of, and I very much see this around holidays, like Christmas holidays and stuff, where it's like, oh, you absolutely should not track. If you track, you're an asshole. And if you take your Tupperware and blah, 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 like you shouldn't do that. That's absolutely ridiculous. If you do that, you've got an eating disorder, you're obsessive, blah, blah, blah. And in some ways, they might have some elements of truth there. And the same way goes, no, other people are like, no, you must always track, you must stay on point. How much do your goals matter to you? Do you want to gain muscle? Do you want to lose fat? Blah, blah, blah. You should always track. And I'm very much, whenever I see these statements of very much black and white, kind of telling people what to do, I'm just like just chill out. Like, let people live their lives in a way that is acceptable and enjoyable to them. However, you must be in a position where you understand and can be honest with yourself, because I think there are people who are trapped in both camps, who are trapped in the yo-yo dieting, and they must either be on point or completely just let go. And there's other people that are like, they have to be on point all the time, otherwise they feel stressed. And I think most people should get to a point of maturity with themselves where they know themselves, in which they know how far away from each end they can be. Like we talked about before, kind of flexible dieting is that dimmer switch. You're never, rarely completely on. That's kind of contest prep or kind of photo shoot prep and things. And then you're never completely off. Like, you're never actually just disregarding everything you've ever learned about every macronutrient. Like, you don't do that. You have some conscious awareness all the time, and the degree to which you are on or off is going to depend on you, your goals, and all of those sort of things. So I think you brought in loads of great points, and all I would add in addition would be just kind of know where you're coming from and plan for it if you can. Just like we say in like the estimating macros one, if you are someone who needs to be kind of, if you want to make sure you're hitting your macros each day and you're going out for meals maybe every week, then maybe try and plan ahead, look at what's on the menu ahead of time. Just like if you're going on holiday, try and have it like, you're going on holiday in a few months, try and plan like whether, if you're in a dieting phase, try and plan like a diet break before that, or during that rather, and so that you can transition into it as best as possible. And that comes with training as well, which we're going to go into. It's probably quite a good transition into the training kind of, maybe you can plan taking that.
Can I just I would just quickly add something to the extremist approaches of both camps,
100%.
especially the ones who think that go hard or go home. You always need to follow your diet, otherwise you're a failure or anything. It's funny because these are the people most of the time who are doing something like a refeed as well, right? During the dieting phase. Why not then skip the refeeds like for 3 weeks? Then you have 6 days of higher caloric intake, which you then can make use of during the diet break. Or you could even go as far in argumenting like that you could diet a little bit more aggressive, cut the calories per day by 200 kcals for the next 6 to 8 weeks, when you know that you're going on holiday then in 8 weeks time, saving up 200 calories per day, which you then have like for the entire holiday, is like this macro borrowing, right? Where you are like taking some calories from one day, putting it onto another, because it's the same principles that apply. You are then consuming a certain amount of calories over the bigger picture and over a certain amount of time, whether you are ingesting like 22,000 calories on 1 week and then being in a deficit that is an intake of 15,000 calories per week for 6 weeks, is not a bigger difference in comparison to someone who's more on the middle road or anything like that, right? And it's like I said, plan ahead, and then everything is possible, actually.
Yeah, the better you can plan ahead, the less stress it will cause as well. Because even if you are in contest prep and things like this, like you can look ahead and be like, right, there's supermarkets there. There's a GNC or whatever it is there. Like I can pick up some protein bars. And actually, that brings me to a point of which obviously you already talked about. Like for bodybuilders, people interested in keeping their body composition looking as like best as possible, protein is such a good thing to keep up during holiday, because not only is it kind of the most filling macronutrient, so it's going to keep you nice and full during your time, hopefully prevent some overeating. It's also going to help keep up MPS, so muscle protein synthesis, and hopefully any muscle protein breakdown that's going on, like it can protect against that somewhat. And the difficulty is when you are on holiday, depending where you go, protein could be very expensive or it could be very sparse. And so something I've learned over the time that I've been kind of doing this bodybuilding thing and being careful about this is always take protein powder with me, because every time I don't, I regret it. And I'm like, fuck, I have to go and like buy cottage cheese and shit like this that they have.
And it's funny that you said it, because when I was in Tokyo in 2014, protein is really, everything is really expensive in Tokyo. But yes, you get a lot of protein via fish and stuff like that, but it's really expensive, right? And what I did was I went to Gold's Gym, because Gold's Gym is in Japan as well. And I went there and bought a pack of whey protein, because I didn't take or bring anything with me. And it was such an easy way and convenient way to ensure that I hit my protein levels for each and every single day. And it's such a cheap source, and it doesn't really take too much space in your trunk. So you can easily take it with you.
Especially when all I did was I didn't even plan ahead with this. I just had 1 kilo bag, or a 1 kilo bag of Impact whey protein from My Protein, put that in my suitcase. And the great thing is I can have that the start of my day when we're in the hotel, and I'm not taking it out with me and having protein through the day. Like I must have protein every 3 to 5 hours, blah, blah, blah. No. So I just have like a big serve in the morning. And then when I get back in the evening, I was like, do I need to make up any protein? Probably better safe than sorry. Have a couple of scoops there as well. Like just starting and ending your day is quite a good way of doing it. So
Steve, before we move on to the training aspect, how did you manage it in Mexico? Because it's the closest example we have right now. Give the audience a little bit of insight how you handled your nutrition in Mexico.
Cool. So I'm going to be absolutely honest with everyone, as always. And I think I'm more meticulous with this than I need to be. And I'm probably more meticulous than I should be in some ways. Like part of me wishes I didn't need to be. And I think this just comes back from comes to my background where I was very, like, this is not meticulous compared to what I was before. Like, I was borderline eating disorder, levels of meticulous, and kind of very obsessive about my food composition and things like this. So the way I did it in Mexico was very similar to how I just approach any occasion where I don't have full control. Is I will very roughly estimate foods when I'm out, and that's pretty much all I did. So I just estimated pretty much everything, but I would log it and track it. There's an element of that control that gives me that sense of freedom. I think that there's a quote, quite a good quote, and I might have just literally quoted it, like, having some sense of control provides more freedom. Knowing that I kind of was there or thereabouts on point made me feel better. And whether or not I was off by, like, I could have easily been off by like 500 calories, easily, like, I'm eating out every single meal pretty much. That was enough for me to feel better about the situation. And I think often when I do try and just go like the fuck it meme where he's throwing all the papers off like fuck macros, I end up just getting very kind of a bit anxious and a bit kind of stressed out. And I would love, and I think I'd have to transition there myself. And I would, if it ever became a concern for me, having like days off tracking and things like this. But yeah, that's essentially how I did it. I still had, like, it didn't hold me and Charlotte back. We still ate at great restaurants, but I do know, and I'll be honest, when we are picking foods to eat and picking at restaurants, there is part of me that's thinking like, there's not much on that menu that looks like it would quote unquote fit or like hit my preferences. And it's funny, me and Charlotte have this argument of like what makes food appealing to us. And I have, obviously most normal people just have like maybe price and taste, and that's all they consider. Whereas I have like price, taste and macros. And if I'm honest, I probably prioritize macros, then price, then how it tastes. No, well, price and taste will switch around, but I actually get a ton of satisfaction out of eating something that fits my goals more so. And that, to a lot of normal people, is weird, and maybe it is a bit of a disordered way of eating. Who knows?
I don't know. I'm a little bit in a conflict, perhaps because I am involved in it myself, and I don't want to admit that. It could potentially be, or that I think that it's an okayish behavior, but on paper it might be categorized as somehow of an eating disorder. Could be the case, right? But for me personally, it's the same like you. It gives me some satisfaction, control. So it sounds weird, but gives me pleasure, right? And
yeah, delayed response to that one.
And then but I also have to say I really do enjoy high standard cuisine. I really love to go to a place like where the cuisine is just amazing and outstanding. And then I don't really care about the price anymore. I don't really care that much about the macros anymore. Then it's purely for the taste. But this is more of a rare occasion when that happens, right? And because it's happened on a rare occasion, you then can really fully embrace that kind of moment and fully, I don't know, enjoy the moment and stuff, right? But other than that, I am the same, that I rate the macros and hitting my goals and me being able to stay in control higher than the pricing and the flavor. This is probably also because, or this is probably also the reason why I do enjoy things like rice cakes, quark, things that for other people are just like, what the fuck? Why do you enjoy that? Or plain chicken with broccoli. For other people, it's just like, holy shit, that's the driest shit you can eat. For me, it gives me really a great response, right? And once again, perhaps it is kind of an eating disorder, but then you can also raise the question, only because it's societal norm to just intuitively eat. Is it the better approach than having control over your macros and being aware of the foods you're actually ingesting? Who is then the more healthy human being? what might be a better approach? The more of a controlled aspect or the more intuitive eating? And this is, I think, a moral question we can't really answer.
And I guess my argument would also be to bring up, like, if an athlete was doing this, would they be seen as someone who was this wouldn't be disordered eating because this is supporting their overall goals? And it's like, for me and for you, Pascal, our job is in this industry. Like, we are personal trainers, we're online coaches. Like, our actual, I always said, like, part of me going to the gym is actually part of my job in a way. Because if I don't go and lift and learn stuff about my body, learn stuff about lifting and how I'm responding, that helps me overall as an instructor. And if I don't experiment with myself with nutrition and training, like, I don't know, it's kind of, it is part of my job. There's some weird boundaries there, but by no means, guys, am I stressing and am I like, I'm not taking scales to restaurants. None of that is happening. I'm enjoying ice cream with Charlotte. And much in the same way with Pascal, like, every single day in Mexico, I wasn't like, I have to, like, some days I think I went up to like 4,000 calories, other days were like 3,000. I am kind of going to my hunger levels and what my preferences are on the day. And like Pascal said, like, and I've talked about on my Instagram, like, my steps were like triple what they normally would be. Like, I'm not really stressed about it. It's just having, even if that control is like completely pointless, like, just having it there just made me a bit freer.
And I think that where we want to conclude it somehow, to give a really solid recommendation, I would say, it's like you said here just a couple of seconds ago, do whatever you deem fitting and suiting for your personal preferences and your goals, as long as you enjoy it, don't stress about it, and you don't make or put a pressure or burden on the people in your environment, right? And then do whatever you deem right.
No,
if you want to track and the people around you are fine with that, nothing wrong with that. But I mean, do you have to? Absolutely not. Especially if it gives you anxiety or if it causes you to some kind of a stress, because it's hard to track while you're on the Seychelles or something and you can't really measure anything or buy things in the supermarket which have kind of nutritional information on it and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
and the only other insider tip I'll say is Quest bars are legit the best travel bar, because they can just be incredibly hot. They can get smushed in handbags. They can get molded to your ass cheek. And you can still open that bad boy, eat it, and it tastes good. Whereas other protein bars, they get ruined.
But just from a personal experience kind of standpoint, don't eat more than 3 Quest bars at the same time, because then it will make your traveling experience definitely not as good. And also for the people in your environment, it makes it a little bit harder.
No, that's a good point. And we should probably transition into training, which I think will be an easier discussion in general.
Totally.
We probably missed a lot with the nutrition. So if people have got questions or anything, please post them below and we can go.
Totally. I mean, while I was talking about how to tackle the nutrition on holiday, I just came to realize that it is a really broad topic.
Yeah.
And so many different aspects to it you need to take into consideration, and so many scenarios as well.
No, completely. Like, yeah. I mean,
we can probably only touch the surface, and there's probably a lot we missed here. And if you have any kind of questions specific to your kind of situation, just leave it in the comment section below.
Cool. Yeah, because it's quite a fun. I quite enjoy talking about it, really. But the training aspect, I think, is a little bit easier. Like you said, you might not have access to any gym. You might have access to a gym facility. You might not want to spend the time there. Again, I think this can be quite a broad question to your scenario. And again, it depends on where you're coming from, your context situation. But the way I like to do holidays is I always like to plan to have a deload there, because with deloads, we know, like, getting into the gym is better than not doing anything, but you can still get, I mean, all we know for a deload is you need kind of volume and some element of intensity to come down so that you're recovered for another kind of mesocycle of training. But you would be wise to get into the gym at least to keep up some of your fitness. So to keep up some of that kind of the neurological pathways of kind of training and stuff. We're not really going to the gym to grow muscle. We're not really going there to try and maintain muscle, because you're not going to lose anything in a week. We're going there just to keep that fitness element, to keep that routine. So what I would say is, if you can't get access to a gym and you're planning to deload, like, you can do some just like body weight squats and press ups, find a tree, do some pull-ups. Like, don't stress about that sort of thing. If you can do a bit of that, that would be really nice. But if you want to take a week off, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Totally. And you give your joints and tendons also some downtime, especially when you never take off or time off the gym. That's probably actually a really good decision to just take a complete week or even 2 weeks off of the gym, because every once in a while your tendons and joints need that kind of break, because they take longer to recover from training than muscles do.
Yeah, deload isn't going to be solving kind of like elbow tendonitis and things. Whereas, yeah, like you said, a complete active recovery phase, which I don't think any of us really do. And I don't necessarily think bodybuilders need to plan for. But holiday is a great excuse to kind of, the thing with people is, and the thing for bodybuilders and the thing for myself is, if I have a reason and a plan for doing something, it makes me feel much better about doing it and sticking to it. So if I can say, oh, I'm going on holiday and I'm not training because it's holiday, but that's not going to make me feel good. But if I say I'm going on holiday and it's actually a planned active recovery week, that makes me feel much better about it, and I'm much more likely to stick to it.
Totally. And in addition to what you can do as a training stimulus, a really good recommendation or suggestion I once saw on Instagram, actually, which made me really think and consider that as well. If you really don't have access to a gym facility, but you want to do something, either go out, like you said, find a trade, do something there, do body weight squats and stuff like that. Or you could actually buy an easy resistance band and do everything with a resistance band, because you can do so many things like push-ups. You can do, something like dips, chin-ups, body weight squats, quote-unquote goblet squats or front squats. You can do so many things with with one single resistance band. And actually also, as the name implies, have some kind of resistance, so that you don't need to do 200 repetitions to go to failure when it comes to body weight squats or anything like that. I have no idea how many reps I would need in terms of body weight squats. So that was just an arbitrary number. I'm not saying that I need to do 200 squats as a body weight squat to go to failure. But what I wanted to say is, you can actually buy a resistance band that allows you to do something like 10 to 20 repetitions with certain exercises. And that gives you plenty of stimulus. And when you do something like that 2 times during that week, full body, it's enough. I mean, when we take a look at the current literature on how much you need in terms of resistance training, and when the time comes that there's actually some muscle loss, you would need to have some kind of downtime over 3 weeks, like doing nothing at all, right? And then not having sufficient amount of protein. And if you just do something, you don't really need to stress about it.
I feel like there was some literature saying that muscle loss occurs at kind of half the speed of what muscle gain takes. So we know how long gaining muscle takes. It's like double the length to lose that muscle. And then we have muscle memory, which is a real thing. Yeah, don't quote me on that, but I think it's a good kind of thought that muscle loss is much harder as long as you're not doing like an idiot things.
I've never heard it, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. It could potentially be. I just know that when it comes to true muscle loss, you would need to be like in a clinical setting where you can't really move at all, don't get sufficient amount of protein in, and then over like the 2 to 3, I think even 3 weeks was it or something, first then you see some kind of detrimental effects on your muscles. And after that, it's just like you said, the muscle memory effect. And when the people don't believe me, I'm the best example for that, because after totally. And after my surgery in December, I took a picture like the time when I was able to put away my crutches. The left leg was so much more smaller than the right one, because I couldn't really put any kind of pressure on it for 10 weeks. Nothing at all. I couldn't give any kind of stimulus to it. And I was lying in a hospital setting for a week without being able to move the leg even, right? So it was so much smaller. And now, after a year, it's back to normal. And I'm squatting more than I ever did before.
Amazing. Yeah, I was going to say, the reason I was kind of giggling to myself when you said the only time this happens is when you're in a hospital setting, like lying in bed, you can't move and you're not eating enough. And I was like, for weeks. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. And I came out as a skinny rake. I didn't even have that much muscle in the first place. But now, did I have anything to add to that? Oh yeah, this is just an additional tool. Like the bands are really good. I actually have you can use a suitcase. You can do I did this on when I was traveling around Australia with Charlotte. I used my suitcase for a period of time. Like you can do overhead presses, you can do goblet squats with it, you can do rows with it. You can get a bit inventive if you want to, and nuts like us that like exercising, you'll find a way.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was in Tokyo, I was staying at the Best Western Hotel, and I had a hotel room with a couch. And what I did was I was actually doing some rowing movements with the couch and stuff, and also pressing movements. I was just lying on the floor and doing floor presses with the couch. So, I mean, just get creative, and there's always a way to get some kind of a stimulus in if you really want to.
And like you said, I think you described the bands as being a really good way of just getting some quick work in. And I think just going kind of for the, because we can't necessarily get the heavy loads going, you can take occlusion bands with you. So that can be a way to do it. You can do myo reps. So I went to the gym a few times and I actually did myo reps because you can search it, but it's very much like an efficient way of just getting an intense stimulus, kind of drop sets, that sort of thing, just so you can get in and out of the gym. If you can get to a gym, it's nice to not be there for a long time. And what I would say is you'll want to do this anyway, because if you're going somewhere hot, it gets hot later in the day, you won't want to train then, you'll probably do lots of steps, you'll be tired. Do it first thing. By doing it first thing, you can also do it before your partner's awake. So that's what I ended up doing. When I did go the 3 times when we were away, I went first thing, got it all done, nice and quick and easy, and was back with Charlotte kind of ready to leave when we were planning to start.
In that case, can you quickly touch on what you did? I know it, but for the listeners.
So yeah, basically, I'd planned to deload for it, but Charlotte gave me the wrong date, so I ended up deloading the week before we went. So when we were going, I was like, shit, I want to train hard. So I actually managed to find it was actually an epic gym there, and I would have loved to do I could have done proper training there, but I couldn't. I wanted to respect Charlotte's time. We don't get to spend that much time together, so I just went 3 times to this gym. I think the first time I went, I actually did some AMRAPs just because I was like, I've deloaded, now would actually be, and I normally wouldn't test because I think testing for a bodybuilder isn't necessary, and I didn't really want to, so I did a few tests. I also wasn't under the best conditions because I was on holiday and stuff, and it just wasn't ideal, but I did some of that just for fun, and it was high intensity, going near to failure, so that kind of ticked those boxes, and I was in and out in quick amount of time. And then the other times I went, I just did full body every time and did myo reps pretty much for everything, and just tried out some new machines. I actually didn't get sore once. I was expecting to get sore because I was doing myo reps and stuff. I actually didn't. So I don't think I pushed it necessarily. I knew I wanted to not fatigue myself massively for this week coming, so I knew I wasn't pushing it to the wall. I think that's something to take into account as well. You don't have, when we're saying go intense, you don't have to go crazy. 3 reps in reserve would still be plenty of a stimulus for you. Yeah, that's what I ended up doing. Yeah, it was actually really fun going to. I like trying out new gyms, so it was nice to have that opportunity, and it was super cheap. A day pass was I can't remember, I think it was 80 pesos, which is £3.
What?
So really nice.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes to that and gym facilities, one good thing is the popularity of CrossFit across the world. That basically you can nearly find everywhere now a gym facility with some proper weights. And even if it's a CrossFit box where you're then able to do some kind of barbell work, absolutely fine. And I mean, you can find anything.
Again,
and if you don't, and
I was just gonna say again, like you said with the nutrition, like dictate it by your goals, your reasons, like who you're with. Because if I was on my own going on holiday there, I probably would have just started my next mesocycle because I could. But I was with Charlotte, so I went 3 times. And she was actually really good to let me kind of go those.
Totally, and I think that especially when it comes to holiday, kind of take care of the people around you a little bit more, because you can stay on track and be focused on your goals like for 100% for the rest of the time of the year. But when you're on holiday with someone else, it's not all about you. That's my opinion.
No, I agree. And yeah, for me with Charlotte, it's kind of my biggest enjoyment, I think, is just because we get to spend so much time together. Because we work all day and then we come back in the evening and that's all we've really got. So having the whole day is, what's nice about it. But I think we covered off that fairly well. We're probably still left. We probably could discuss that a hell of a lot more.
I have one more question at the end here of this podcast. And this is, I heard at some point from a demographical standpoint that Mexico has the fattest population in the world. Is there some truth to it? Did you see a lot of fat people there?
There is quite a lot of fat people there. A lot, I mean, to be honest, like where we were is properly touristy, so we didn't see like that many true Mexicans. But yeah, there was. I mean, it always surprises me, and like anyone who lifts, you'll be surprised. Like I would be walking down the beach, and this is going to sound really arrogant. I'd be like, "Fuck me!" Like I'm the best person. Like I'm the only person here that looks like they lift. Like no one else here lifts. Like,
but it goes to show once again that when it comes to the coaching mentality, and you are a coach, you can't expect that everyone wants to be a bodybuilder.
No, and
because we are such a minority, it's just
And it's a good kick up the arse because we're in such a closed niche. Like you don't see all of us look absurd to the normal population. We look amazing compared to them a lot of the time, whereas we don't compare ourselves to the majority of the population. We end up comparing ourselves to this tiny little niche, and we look at people like Matt Ogus, who's like insanely like aesthetic, whereas
Exactly. How is it possible that someone has such a perfect six-pack?
I know, it drives me up the wall, especially with my wonky abs.
Okay.
The only thing I'd want to leave the listeners with is, like we said, if you can, try and plan for it and make a nice transition into it, because I think that's a good approach to take. It'll make it a lot less stressful, and then just individualize it to yourself, to your goals and your situation. That's the best way to go about it.
Totally. I have nothing to add there. That was really good.
Awesome. Right, guys. Thank you for listening. As always, if there's any questions, anything like that, please post below, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Guacamole.